You're watching Nigeria Decides 2023 here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati.
I'm Ayo Mairo Essing.
And I'm Rufai Senior. I've got a great show lineup for you for the next 6 hours. and
3 days after polls closed in Africa's largest democracy, votes are still being counted, and Nigeria still awaits our next president. Once again, welcome to the continuing coverage of Nigeria's general election, Nigeria Decides 2023.
Yes, indeed. Electoral body INEC is yet to announce all the presidential results from the 36 states of the country. The biggest upset is perhaps from Lagos State, where Labour Party's Peter Obi clinched victory in a traditionally APC stronghold. From Abuja, we will be joined by Frank Tiete, and here in the Lagos studio, Arise analyst Emmanuel Efeni will be joining us too.
also, we'll be bringing you a special cross-country coverage of Nigeria's 2023 presidential and parliamentary elections. Counting and collation of votes continue to dominate headlines in Nigeria and beyond. We'll take a look at the biggest stories of the day and spotlight issues surrounding what is becoming yet another controversial Nigeria general elections. Stay with us, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Nigeria Decides 2023 here on the Rise News channel. Now, the controversy over the collation and upload of results continued on Monday. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has recommended that all elections that have not been credible and transparent should be cancelled. In an open letter, he says beavers where servers have been manipulated, results must be declared void. Take a listen.
It is no secret that INEC officials at operational level have been allegedly compromised to make what should have worked not to work and to revert to manual transmission of results, which is manipulated and the results doctored. The chairman of INEC may claim ignorance, but he cannot fold his hands and do nothing when he knows that election process have been corrupted and most of the results that are brought outside beavers and server are not true reflection of the will of Nigerians who have made their individual choice. At this stage, we do not need wittingly or unwittingly to set this country on fire with the greed, irresponsibility, and unpatriotic act of those who allegedly gave money to INEC officials for perversion and those who collected the blood money. Let me appeal to the chairman of INEC, if his hands are clean, to save Nigeria from the looming danger and disaster which is just waiting to happen. If the chairman can postpone elections 4 days to the election 4 years ago, he can do everything to rectify the errors of the last 2 days.
The National Peace Committee is lamenting reports of voter suppression across the country through targeted violence, disruption of process inducement of voters, intimidation and deliberate frustration of voters. In a statement signed by the national chairman of the committee, General Salami Abubakar, the committee says it is pleased that the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC has accepted the lapses and promised to rectify it. The statement appealed to security agencies to collaborate with INEC in the investigation of weighty allegations. The committee warns concern about the failure of INEC result viewing portal across the country thoroughly investigated. The Peace Committee asked candidates and party chairmen to take full responsibility of statement made by their spokesperson and agents while appealing to citizens to remain calm.
you cannot be using justification that votes took place at the polling units when INEC failed in uploading results from polling units. If you had uploaded those results...
All right, there were heated exchanges at the National Collation Center here in Abuja between party representatives and INEC Chairman Mahmoud Yakub, with the parties demanding greater transparency in announcing the results.
Be using justification that votes took place at the polling units when INEC failed in uploading results from polling units. If you had uploaded those results immediately after vote was casted in each polling unit, we will have access to them and I will not be asking questions here. But as I speak to you, those results were not uploaded for hours. Yesterday, I complained to you, the chairman. I complained to 2 other commissioners, and in my presence, they called the rec in Imo, where even the director of ICT was saying they should use offline to upload.
When there were efforts to undermine the authority of INEC, we stood firmly that INEC must be truly independent. Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the transparency of this process, and we're talking about confidence in the process. I had cause, sir, to engage you yesterday. I had cause to speak to your national commissioners yesterday. I had cause to speak to them this morning about collation and abuse of the electoral process. Mr. Chairman, as we speak, in a number of states, efforts are still ongoing to undermine that process. It is clear that there were problems with uploading the results, which is fundamental to where we are. And we are saying it is important that we know, that Nigerians are aware, that electors know that the votes they've cast were properly uploaded and it reflects the wishes of the people from polling units.
We're now being joined by Arise analyst Emmanuel Efeni in our Lagos studio. Emmanuel Efeni, good morning.
Good morning,
Malabite. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo.
So much has happened since yesterday. So much has happened overnight. What do you make specifically of the statement by former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, and also former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar? 2 major interventions yesterday as the collations went on at the National Collation Center in Abuja, and also what transpired at that National Collation Center.
Yes, the results, as we all observed yesterday, the continuation of the release of the results, where the state reps and the state returning officers came to the National Collation Center, and of course they were releasing the results, and I think that exercise will continue today, we must say. But what transpired, where the representative of the PDP presidential candidate, Senator Dino Melaye, stood up to raise objection, and they were clearly around the issues of uploading of the results on the INEC server, as it were. And of course, that in itself brought about heated argument, and Dino Melaye was given the opportunity to state his position, but the INEC chairman decided to carry on, promising that some of these issues, that if parties have any issues, they should forward them and they will be investigated in due course while the release of the result continues. Of course, at one point, Dino Melaye and the representative of the Labour Party, who also made his own position clear, had to walk out of the collation center. But we don't have to just see it as perhaps another Urube scenario, because the issues raised by Dino Melaye were quite germane, And I was not surprised when later in the day, former President Olusegun Obasanjo wrote a letter which he personally authored. And of course, the video of him reading that letter himself was made available to news media across the country and beyond. The issues the former president raised, that's President Obasanjo now, he was asking that INEC should cancel results in areas where beavers failed and where transmission of results to the servers also failed. We must make distinction between the call of Dino Melaye and Labour Party that the election should be cancelled and that of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was specific that where beavers failed and servers failed, in those areas will be cancelled and a new fresh election held in those locations. And premising his argument on the fact that if INEC could postpone election by 4 days before the last general election in 2019, it will not be too much a thing to do for them to suspend the release of the result while they attend to these areas of infraction pointed out. But what is the position? INEC, in its own wisdom, chose its mode of accreditation. And before the election, we were told about beavers. And in the off-season elections, we all saw it. Beavers was a necessary technological tool at every polling unit. You must be accredited by beavers either by your biometric or face recognition for you to vote. And in the run-up to the general February 25 for the presidential and National Assembly election, it was a sing-song that beavers is a game changer. INEC officials, past and present, told Nigerians, beavers is a game changer. No beavers, no voting. But what happened on Saturday is that we had many areas where beavers failed to work, but accreditation went on and voting took place. And this has become a source of controversy, as we now see. So the intervention of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, yes, many will say, yes, he's a familiar letter writer. Yes, so he endorsed a candidate in this election. So he has an interest. But we must look at the message, not necessarily the messenger in this case. The points former President Obasanjo has raised are quite genuine because Section 60 of the Electoral Act stated clearly that the mode of registration of voting will be that which INEC has chosen. And in this case, INEC chose beavers as a tool, the device for accreditation. And if we look at Section 47(3) of the Electoral Act 2022, where the device fails, and talking about either the card reader or any other technological device, in this case, beavers, failed, another one should be requested for. And if that fails, then the election in that location must be taken to another date. That's what the Electoral Act states. But we had a situation where in many places the beavers did not function. It malfunctioned, but election went on. How widespread is this? It's left to be seen, and that will be a matter of investigation. So what the former president has called for, that, look, INEC, why don't you step back and take a look at some of these complaints before you proceed. And if indeed there are areas where this happened, then you should go ahead and conduct a fresh election in those areas. You cancelled the elections, and before you continue with the release of the result. This is the position of the former president, and I don't think it's too much a thing to ask for, because going by the extant law, going by INEC's choice of accreditation before voting, it has to comply with the law,
yes,
because that's what the law says. Whatever method you have chosen, you must follow it. Nobody compelled INEC to go, because they have the option to now have a number of areas where you did manual accreditation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Then the issue of transmission of results.
That was what I was actually going to
Yes.
come to, in terms of, because he also criticized the lack of use of electronic transmission of results, which is also
a key
what
component.
the National Peace Committee Chair, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, had pointed to, and international observers. The failure of using the electronic transmission or electronically transmitting results has come up as a red flag,
Yes,
in terms of the...
Because what INEC stated before the election is that at the polling unit, the results will be uploaded immediately.
Yes.
And Nigerians can easily view these results
Making it
on
transparent.
IREV, bringing an unprecedented transparency to the electoral process. But that we have not seen.
All right, well, a number of issues here, and like you mentioned, one of the things that has made this election come under a lot of scrutiny is the conduct by INEC, and the fact that the chair, as we saw in that video that was played, is not willing, as it seems, to listen to some of the concerns raised by these party agents, both from PDP, the Labour Party, and even external players or actors, like you've seen in the case of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and a number of people who've called for this. Now, what are the options open to? Because in a matter of day, by today, the end of today, we should be able to tell or who would emerge as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the new president. What are the options available to these parties? Yesterday, they staged a walkout. We saw Senator Dino Melaye, and then was followed by the Labour Party agents who staged a walkout in protest of the lack of use of the electronic transmission of results, and the INEC chair not responding to their concerns. What are the options available? Are we going to proceed as normal? In the event that happens, what does this mean for the confidence of voters and electorates who came out in their numbers to vote?
Well, the INEC chair listened. He listened, but he decided not to take any immediate step or to halt the process of releasing the results. That was his decision and he asked the parties to go and bring their complaints, and they will be looked at after he has taken all the results. But what that means is that at the end of having all the states bringing in their results, INEC will make a declaration. I'm not sure INEC chair, after having taken all the results from the returning officers in the various states, he will now pause to go and look at complaints before making an announcement. He will go ahead and make an announcement based on the results received so far. Once he receives all the results, he will make a pronouncement. Thereafter, what happens? It means the parties will be left with no option than to go to the court. But for now, some parties have boycotted the collation center. Yep. Will that have any effect? If INEC doesn't stop with the release of the result, well, their boycott will not have any effect on the result. But we are talking of legitimacy of the process. We are talking of the confidence in the process. Whether that in itself, we don't want to make any prediction as to what will follow. But these points raised by former President Olusegun Obasanjo as a pathway, pause, look at the complaints, and you continue. Looks like a safe pathway for INEC. But if INEC decide to do otherwise, well, the parties will have no option, perhaps, after the release of the result. Those who are not satisfied, of course, the option open to them is to go to the tribunal and challenge the outcome of the February 25 election.
Right. Okay, I hear we'll go for a quick commercial break and we'll come back after.
Right here in the studio, Rufai Oseni,
Yeah.
you were going to comment on the same subject.
Yes, I was going to comment on the same subject, and good point you made, Mr. Ifeni, about, at first, the laws of the land backing the use of electronic methods of transmission, which is beavers, and also the evidential promises made hitherto by INEC and INEC officials. And I've been going through a glossary of these promises. Even as at, I think, on the 11th of November 2022, the INEC chairman still bragged about it and boasted that this was going to be the best elections ever, and they were going to transmit from the polling units. In fact, everybody was confident, and the reason why people came out to vote in this election was because of the confidence in the system. But what happened? And I think I'll go a little bit technological now. And a little bit about the background of doing this. I have run tech companies. I know technological backends, so I know what I'm talking about. When you say that you have a server pretty much, let's just use the basic word, serves the system. And there's a server for almost everything. If I'm to have a website, it will have a server where somebody can go to be able to access all the data at that website position. So what a cyber just simply means is, I am here, I want to access an information from your website, but you are the server, Ayo. So I come to you when I go online and I transmit the data you've got and I put it on the website. You hold the data and you serve me the data. I think the first investigation point should be what happened to INEC servers between the hours of 12 or 2 p.m. to when they started transmitting results that evening. Two things happened. Number one, when INEC was asked that question, when the collation center started opening up, they said they did not promise, somebody from INEC said they did not promise that they were going to transmit presidential results. But when they saw that that was a faux pas, the next thing they said was to issue a statement that there were glitches. So when you issue a statement that there were glitches, what kind of glitches happened? If most of the servers, people could not transmit results and they had to put it offline, then what happened to the server at that point in time? Was the server live? That's the first question we should ask. What was the incident report for the server as at those times that they said there was a technical glitch? Because the system has a backend that should give you an incident report of what happened to the servers at those points in time. So I think also Nigerians deserve to know from INEC, not just telling us technical glitch. Something caused a technical glitch.
INEC made a press.
Technical glitch is like saying, I have a headache. What causes an headache? Your headache can be caused by high blood pressure, can be caused by stress, a normal headache. So the question we should press further is, what caused the technical glitch on the server? Was the server on? Was it off? What happened to the interface? Because the large complaints people heard was the fact that the servers, people couldn't transmit results on them and they had to go offline. Why did they need to go offline for something that was promised to be able to have a real-time effect? Let's also introspect further. Was there a cyber attack on the server? If there was, there's going to be an incident report that will report it. Or was the server put off? There's going to be an incident report that will report it. So the next line of action in all of this is to also, and for the sake of transparency, to also know what caused the glitch. And how you can get what caused the glitch is a holistic back-end incident report on what happened. Another layer should be incident reports on the beavers. So the question is, in areas that there was beavers malfunction, what is the forensic incident report on the beavers? Thirdly, does INEC have the back end robust enough to be able to provide the incident data on the beavers deployed in over 170,000 polling units? And that's why I had always talked about the technological backend. Because the only difference between our elections and Kenya was that through to type, a certain Wafuli Chebukati, the head of Kenya Electoral Body, ensured that the results were being seen real time as it was going out. And it was real time to the extent, based on this technological outlook, that as the votes were being returned and counted in, you could even see it on television stations and everything. Once this party got X number of votes, it was uploaded. Once this party got Y number of votes, it was uploaded. All the newspapers, everybody, once you got in there, you could see the dashboard. But when you look at our process, it's been difficult to be able to get an accurate dashboard because something happened in the link of uploading. And people don't even have data to deal with to be able to upload. But the case was different in the state election. I think it was the last election, the Osun election. You were going to see that, to a large extent, Dr. Abbas, so sorry, I'll finish up this point. Yaga even had to partner with a certain TV station that as the results were coming in because it was being uploaded, you could see the effects on a board. So what we should ask for now, the incident reports of the INEC servers, the servers that even served the IREV portal itself. We must be able to holistically know what happened and also the incident reports on the beavers. I rest my case. Okay, well, at this point, Frank Tete, I would like to invite you. Frank Tete is in our Abuja studio to make your comments. What transpired yesterday, the state of play, if you may say so, in Nigeria at this moment.
Thank you. There is a general consensus that things have not gone well, that expectations have been let down by INEC. There are a mixture of compounding problems that INEC faced. Remember, I kept on harping on the day of election when this day had its headline as a moment of truth. With the moment of truth translating to the fact that every institution and person that are connected to the electoral process would now face the truth of the fact that they will be on trial as to whatever they have done. Now we are interrogating the process and exposing some of the inadequacies of INEC, much of which we should have done earlier. We didn't do. There are dangerous landmines every time in a statute. Whereas a statute will prescribe standards and give procedures, it will also have provisions much more serious than expected in terms of delegated legislation to give the INEC chairman, in this case the Electoral Act, so much powers to correct and to ratify a number of things. We won't go there now, but let us first of all agree that the standard the Electoral Act stipulated is that the collating officer and ultimately or the returning officer, before announcing result, that's the standard under section 64, before announcing result must satisfy himself, that's the provision, must satisfy himself that the vote is collating. First, it starts with vote, then the second is the result. Must be in tandem, must be consistent with what he had earlier collected with the technological device which INEC has prescribed, in this case the beavers, which had also been sent before. It's a problem. It's a bigger problem of inelegant drafting. He would have sent it before. He would have transmitted it before announcing it. That could be problematic, because it shows that which one comes first. Is it the transmission? Yes, because that's a provision of the law. Transmit the number of accredited voters. Then, before you announce result, check. It's a mandatory provision of the law. Check whether the numbers that you have collated together with the number of accredited voters tally with what you have sent earlier before you ultimately announce. That's a problem. But you see, where the real problem is section 149 and 150. I mentioned it yesterday, and we haven't given much attention to it. Perhaps that's the reason why INEC is carrying on this brazen approach to it, despite the humongous pieces of evidence staring it in the face that Nigerians are hugely dissatisfied. What is the provision of section 149? It says that INEC has the powers to make rules and regulation to give effect to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with regards to election, and to also give effect to the provisions of the Electoral Act with regards to making an election succeed. So imagine the fact that there is no provision as to restricting INEC as to when to make those regulations and rules. We understand the protocol to good governance under the ECOWAS regime does not allow any change to the Electoral Act. But what about rules and regulations that INEC can make? Does it mean that INEC in the middle of the game can say, okay, it has decided to change the rules with regards to the fact that whether or not results should be uploaded or announced first? Again, if you move on to the next section, which is section 150, which is, I think, is subject to further interpretation, and I consider it very dangerous on a positive note, is that whatever an official of INEC does, whether it's in violation of the act, whatever it is, with regards to documentation, forms, and again, it moves further to say actions, whatever they have done remain valid. Even though in the express face of it, it appears to be contradictory to the provisions of the Constitution or the Act. It says that whatever they do as INEC is correct until a court sets it aside. So now go back to the practical reality that we face. In a situation report that I got with regards to Delta State, persons that underwent the training process, the acclimatization process with regards to the technology, were not the same persons that were deployed to the field, because there was actually a protest that almost led to a riot when they were referred to polling officers that were trained that were not deployed. I particularly interrogated a supervising polling officer who said she had to protest to high heavens in Asaba because her name was omitted after undergoing training from leaving Warri to Patani or so for 3 days at her own expense. So the myriad of problems include the fact that the people element of it appears to be highly compromised. But what are we talking about? We are in a situation, take for example, I think we are expecting too much from INEC. We are expecting that results will be out in such a short time because of a promise that INEC knows that it could not have kept. Even though we know that countries like Indonesia that share a lot of things with us in common don't have their election results within a month. We should have, and in that case, expectedly, when all of these complaints are coming to the INEC chairman, he knows better that he should have suspended the process of announcing the results and then proceed to carry on investigation, because democracy is on trial. to the extent that the entire world invested so much to ensure that Nigeria succeeds. We cannot be at this time the ones who are our own enemies, failing ourselves. So the INEC chairman, however well-intentioned he appears to be, however well he has comported himself in the face of mounting provocations, he should know that his responsibility transcends the law and the regulations he has made, but that he owes the entire world an explanation at this time. He has to carry on processes that will show that he is on the side of truth. And the best thing to do now is not to accede to calls for the cancellation of the election, but to suspend the whole process of announcement so that there can be an investigation. And Nigerians must be ready to be patient to see that the investigation process is carried on. Rufai has copiously raised a lot of posers that require answers. Those answers cannot just come by hiding under the provisions of Section 149 and 150 to say that go to court. After all, INEC is empowered to ratify whatever any official does.
Let's start with the point of law. With due respect, it's not 149 and 150. It is 148 and 149. That, those are the sections that are at issue. If you have the Electoral 2022, you may well check. Section 150 talks about local government elections. But, the issues you have raised are in 148 and 149. 148 gives, INEC powers to take decisions. 149 says if you are dissatisfied, you must go, you can go to court. And that is precisely what the INEC chairman was trying to suggest yesterday when he said, look, if you have your facts, confront us with the facts and let's deal with the facts. If you say that the figures being announced are not the same as the ones, announced at the polling units, then give us the alternative and then we can look at the alternative. Otherwise, after the announcement of results, we will do the review. And that draws our attention to the Nigerian conundrum. In Nigeria, if you've been in politics before, the argument is always that, look, win first and let other people complain and let them go to the courts. We're faced at this moment in Nigeria with a situation whereby there could be a lot of litigations at various levels, and it may well be the courts that will determine who will be president or who will win whatever position at the end of the day. But it is true that INEC has failed in many regards. The use of electronic transmission was touted, advertised as one of the major innovations since the return to civilian rule in 1999. And we were told on many occasions by INEC, including serving officers and retired officers like Mikey Guinea, that BVAS is the be-all and end-all of this process because that will protect the integrity of the electoral process. But where is BVAS today? Where is IREF today? INEC came round on Sunday to tell us, oh, these are technical glitches because we didn't anticipate what will happen in a general election. And I think that, that's not an excuse to give because the fact that there will be greater demand on the system, on the infrastructure, was foreseeable. And now you have INEC throwing his hands in the air and giving excuses and refusing to listen. International observers have also made the point in their various reports that indeed it will look like this electoral process has been compromised because INEC did not live up to expectations. The enthusiasm of the people translated into, that zeal to go out there and vote was not matched by the preparedness of INEC. Because while the people were prepared to make a choice, to determine their own future, to vote for change, to vote for whatever is their priority, INEC dropped the ball. INEC held the shortest end of the stick. And that is why we have this problem, in my view. But specifically, we started this program by drawing attention to the statements made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo and former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar. If you look at the details of what President Obasanjo put out there yesterday, he's been warning about chaos, about disaster, about tragedy waiting to happen because of the angst of the people, because of the dissatisfaction of the Nigerian people with the way the entire process is unfolding. And the big question is about the integrity of the process. Already, the Labour Party is saying that if there is any protest on the streets, NSAS 2.0, nobody should blame the Labour Party. At least one prominent Labour Party official has been quoted as saying that. Again, yesterday at the National Collation Center, about 4 political party agents walked out of the process. 13 others who were there, decided to stay and said they were not walking out. But at least we saw 4 persons walking out representing, other political parties. What was their statement? Dino Melaye, to be specific, said that the entire process is fraudulent. President Olusegun Obasanjo said as much by saying that, look, in places where beavers did not work, there should be a review of the process. There should be a cancellation of the process. In other words, he was practically asking that the entire process or the better part of the process should be redone. Now, he went further. He addressed President Muhammadu Buhari directly that INEC has no blame. That at the end of the day, the INEC chairman can hop into a plane and go on vacation after chaos will have ensued in Nigeria. But that the person that will be blamed will be President Muhammadu Buhari. I hope that, this is not just about Obasanjo saying this and that. Former president calling out a sitting president and saying, you promised to leave a legacy of credible election. Nigerians believed you. Now that process is having an issue, is having a problem. Can you, President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, step forward and rescue this situation? And it was not just President Obasanjo making these statements. Former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who organized as the lead person 2 different peace accords. One in September 2022, the second one in February 2023, has also stepped forward to call for calm, to sue for peace. Having seen, I assume, that the political parties did not take the spirit, the letter of those peace accords seriously, and that there is palpable danger, there's palpable threat of chaos in the country. Now, these 2 major voices of reason should be placed alongside, the protests by the political parties, the observations of the international community, so that at the end of the day, what we're dealing with are basic residual points. 1, the credibility of the process. 2, the integrity of the process. 3, the legitimacy of the process. And the legitimacy of the process can only be derived from how acceptable the outcome is at the end of the day. I've seen some people calling Obasanjo names, saying that he's a hypocrite. I've not seen anybody abusing Abdulsalami Abubakar yet, but we should be worried that by this morning, we have voices in the country at different levels, political party, within civil society, among former leaders of Nigeria, protesting that something is not going right. It may well be the best of times, but it is also the worst of times, as I have argued in extenso elsewhere, also this morning. So this is the situation in which we have found ourselves in Nigeria. The National Collation Center adjourned and said that it will reconvene later today to take more results coming from different parts of the country. But I think that the agitation, the anxiety that we're beginning to see, expressed also in another measure in Lagos State yesterday, when there were attacks, reports of the city boiling over and all of that, is an indication that from how the results have been collated and what is being announced, that people are beginning to have an idea of how this may well pan out. But what is important is that Nigeria always manages to survive. And so we can just rest on the wing of hope, and hope truly that all of this will pan out well. Emmanuel Fene.
Yes.
You are the church leader in this congregation. We can only rely on hope.
Well, yes, it's good to be hopeful. Life without hope is almost, it means you're dead. As long as you are alive, you continue to hope. But, Ruben, we must do beyond just hoping. And prescriptions have been given by these two former leaders as to what has been considered as, because what happened in a number of polling stations, violence, deliberate suppression of votes, has tainted the process in a way. And if something is not done to ameliorate the situation at this point, I don't want to talk about NSAS 2.0, but if something is not done at this point, there will be legitimacy crisis if an announcement is made today and a winner is declared. And we don't want to live with that kind of situation where perhaps the winner will come and set up a panel that will say the election that brought me to power was flawed. No, it's not that kind of thing we want. We want these are flaws that have been highlighted. In the process of this declaration of results, can we take a break and look at some of these problems as highlighted? And I think it's not too much to ask for, as in the case of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, he has intervened. And I think his voice of reason should be listened to. Abdul Salami Abubakar, the convener of the Nigeria, the Peace Committee, has also waded in because he acknowledged the fact that there has been voter suppression and, of course, violence in many places. The failure of the IREV portal has been key because in the off-season elections, we saw this worked. Yeah. And Nigerians were happy that at last we are going to see a very transparent election. Yeah. That as results are announced at the polling units, it is up there for you to see. And to be fair, on Sunday morning, as I was heading to work, a radio station was actually giving out some polling units where results have been pasted on the IREV. That go there, enter your polling unit and check your result. But alas, before midday, everything was gone. It was down. So what happened? Rufa, you asked the question. What happened to the technology used?
Yeah.
We must get to the back end. Yes.
I would like to even, interrogate the tech further. Were there no, draw-off points that once you imputed data and it's not the sheets that is an INEC, was there no, draw-off points where the tech even bounced it back? Because what I've been saying is when you open some results, you are seeing pictures of human beings.
Yeah.
You are seeing pictures of table for a certain area. And that's why I say it will still go back largely to the back end. You see, the confidence people have in tech is because you have permanent imprints as regards what happened. It's just like blockchain. You have permanent imprints because once something happened, there's a record of it. So if something happened to the server, and two things I'd like to ask. Why did an INEC official first say that nobody promised that the presidential election was going to be transmitted? And in the same breath, they, couple of minutes after, they issued a statement and said there was a technical glitch. Why was that happening? So was it that there was no coherence as regards the technical glitch? And once the technical glitch started, couldn't they have issued a pre-statement to say we are experiencing a technical glitch? It's just like your banks, even sometimes when you're not experiencing technical glitch, beforehand your bank tells you that we're experiencing technical glitch across the country. So once they spotted the glitch on the field, why didn't they put out the statements? Why did it elicit? Why was it when people started making mention of it that it was a reactive measure? Because the system should have found it out in the first place. So those are the questions we should also ask. Why is it that 1 minute they were saying, and why is it that when you look at it, people were even encouraged to transmit offline rather than online? Because the system was supposed to be real time. So why was the transmission offline? Because there are reports about places that states copiously that when the citizens were asking, transmit our results, to placate them, they transmitted offline. But that didn't go on the system live, but it was just to placate them. So it's just like you telling you, let me explain it in clear terms for Nigeria. It's just like me sending you fake alerts. You will see the alerts, but it's fake. It didn't make contact with your bank. And we all know how people generate fake alerts. I can go to a various app where people generate fake alerts, put your number, and that's why somebody that wants to send you fake alerts, he will say, give me your number. Then he will put your number there, then he will send it and concoct it and send it to you. It didn't mean that there was a transmission made to the server of your bank. So those are the questions we should be asking.
So this happened, like you mentioned, this happened even at my polling unit where has been mentioned, the citizens participated quite actively in this process.
You keep talking about this, your polling unit. One of those polling units where you voted against the Jagaban.
No, not at all. Interestingly, the APC won at my polling unit. So it wasn't a case of them. And across, so there are a number of polling units in our area. But the reason why because this is a first-hand experience and I'm speaking about some of the inconsistencies, and this was quite a small polling unit. So if this happened in ours, we've had reports. So I was just talking about the fact that the citizens were quite active in making demands as to, we understand that this ought to be transmitted immediately. We've counted, you need to do it in front of us. And we're placated with the fact that, okay, we'll do it, except you want to follow us to the collation center, or we will do it, offline. Now, some reports have also come in, and I've seen some evidence of videos whereby when you go to the portal for results that have been uploaded online, there are wrong results that have been posted online. Like if I mentioned, some, aside the pictures or faces which we saw, or of objects on those portals, we see reports, for instance, from a PU in Lagos State in the Etiosa area. We see instead of the particular result up there, it's one from Nasarawa State, which was erroneously posted up there. So if we wanted to make an assessment of Beavers, which, as we have said again and again, was said to have been a game changer, it was shambolic. It's a failure. So what ought to have been the game changer has now become the primary issue that we have, one of the key issues that we have with this particular election. So we had in PU 240804-007 in Etiosa. When you go to that portal, it's another state result that's on there. And in some instances, some have said their results were not even uploaded at all. And therefore, there's no confidence that their votes were counted in certain areas or was put as part of the final results that was obtained for that area. These are some of the questions that we must ask. And like we said, it's not, beyond the fact that INEC is, has come out to say that this is what happened, XYZ, is that the people demand an audit and a report following that audit as to what really transpired. Beyond the audit of the failures of these of technology used by INEC, also an audit of how the amount of money that was spent. When just days before the election, the INEC chair had come out to assure Nigerians that the monies required from the CBN and from the federal government the federal government had approved, CBN had released, including cash that was needed to mobilize staff. So there was no complaint at all as to any challenge prior. Only afterwards, 2 days after a number of complaints had been made, including agitations by voters, did we have a statement from the director, Festus Okoye, here on Arise channel saying that they would release a statement with regards with what's happened with IREV. A few hours later, he releases a statement which, in the simplest terms, was largely insufficient to address the concerns of Nigerians at that point. He talks about the fact that in previous times when BVAS was used, it was a smaller election, there were state elections. And so we asked the question that were they not aware that on the 25th of February 2023, they were going to be conducting a national election? If this was the case, then we need to audit and question and probe the leadership of INEC itself in terms of incompetence as to not being able to manage the process properly. It's not enough. This is no longer business as usual where we just accept, where Nigerians are not willing to accept it. If people came out in their numbers to register, to show up to vote, and some of them were suppressed and disenfranchised, they would ask questions, and I believe that Nigerians deserve an answer.
Just to quickly buttress, Ayo, that's why I'm asking for an incident report from the server. If the server was overstretched because of multiple actions and loading, it will show it. If the server was not on, it will also show it. And that's why, apart from this, forensics should go into it. Whatever happens, whatever report that we're given, it should also be forensically evaluated. INEC back end must be opened up to independent forensic experts to be able to ascertain what happened to the server.
If I may just, if I can just make some observations quickly, Ruben. Now, 3 quick issues. One, the INEC chair yesterday stated clearly that the compilation of the results will be done through the manual result carried by the returning officer and the INEC commissioner in the state, carried physically to the collation center. That's what they will use for the collation of the presidential results. Then the second point, what Dino Melaye was asking yesterday, but you know, Dino has this aggressive way of dramatizing, so perhaps his point was missed, I don't know. What he was asking, Mr. Chairman, as they are bringing this result, why don't you tell them to upload the results from the polling units now? Let them upload those. But of course, that was not granted. And I saw a result yesterday, a sample of a particular result. You click and you get to that result. It was mutilated, changed with biro that was posted. So if you are not posting these results on the IREV for people to even check that, no, this is not what transpired in my polling unit, that is the basis of the complaint, and that will have brought about the much talked about transparency. Okay. But this has not been done.
Okay, let me put the matter like this. What we're dealing with is again a matter of law, and I'm going to go, after making my comment, back to Frank Tete in Abuja. You will recall that the whole big deal about this cycle of election in Nigeria has to do with the adoption of technology. The whole promise of integrity, credibility, believability, we call it verisimilitude also, is based on the idea that technology will be adopted, human error will be minimized, and Nigerians will have very accurate results. Hence, we had Mike Guinea on this morning show program on many occasions, almost on a weekly basis, saying BVAS will solve the problem. With BVAS!
Game changer.
Anyway, I will need to hear from my brother. I will need to hear from my brother, Mike Guinea. I will need to hear from my brother, Mike Guinea. He's my brother.
But it's also a matter of the law. Section 47, subsection 2 and 3 of the Electoral Act 2022 makes it very clear that the election will be conducted with the use of technology in the manner prescribed by the Commission, INEC. Section 47, subsection 3 of the same Electoral Act 2022. I see you have the act there.
Yes.
I'm quoting correctly.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
You just check.
Yes.
Double check me.
You are.
Fact check me. In any case, what I'm saying is that section 47, subsection 3 then says, look, in polling units where you don't follow the manner prescribed by the Commission, then the results must be cancelled. Which is a legal point contained in that statement by President Olusegun Obasanjo, saying that where the law was not followed, then cancel the election. Now, if you look at what has been reported, then it means that the credibility of this election has been called to question. The integrity of the electoral process has been called to question. And if you are going to cancel, follow the law to the letter, then of course you will have to cancel in so many places. Now let's go to section 60, subsection 5 of the same constitution. It says the election can only be conducted in the manner prescribed by the Commission.
Yes.
Now, before this election took place on February 25, Festus Okoye was in many fora, on television, in the media, saying that INEC is committed to the electronic transmission of results. And the confidence of the people, the trust in this electoral cycle was based on that. That with the aid of technology, everything will go well. But what do we now have? INEC simply did not keep or live up to his promise. We would also like to hear from Festus Okoye, who issued a statement on Sunday and said, technical glitches in paragraph 2 of the statement that he offered. And he said there was no sabotage, there was no intrusion. So if there was no sabotage, there was no intrusion. And to add to the basket of information, the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, also said there was no disruption of network in Nigeria. So what is the excuse? If network was working perfectly, according to NCC, and none of the telecom companies have said that there was an issue. If INEC is saying there was no sabotage, there was no intrusion, why is it that INEC officials on the field violated section 47, subsection 3, section 60, subsection sub 5 of the enabling laws, and also add to that, also throw into that basket, the guidelines offered by INEC itself. So, don't be surprised if, when all is said and done, people go to court and INEC is accused of breaking the law. So, can you afford to have an electoral body in an electoral cycle that is frontline in breaking the law? They say its own enabling laws. So, this is the critical problem that we have. Frank Tietie, in our Abuja studio, please correct me if I'm wrong. Frank, are you still there?
Oh, well, yes, I can hear you. Let me, first of all, thank you for that pointed correction on the numbering of the Electoral Act that I referred to. I was actually relying on the electronic copy, clean copy that I have here, but I have actually updated it with that from the Policy and the Legislative Advocacy Center copy here. I relied on the electronic copy, so thank you again. I'm going to continue to rely on those two provisions that we had mentioned earlier, particularly Section 148 and 149. Do not forget that Section 120 creates the responsibility and the offenses attached to what is described by the law as dereliction of duty. Whatever, if you now look at the provision of Section 148 and 149 that actually talks about ratification, responsibility, that is a saving provision. That is, when INEC has made all the mistakes it can possibly make, it can try to save itself. But how would it save itself? By, in a manifest, is it in a situation of manifest disregard for a provision like section 64 and Section 65, and particularly Section 60 or Section 47 that you have referred to. The challenge, therefore, is there is need to create that confidence-building measure at this time by INEC. And it is by, first and foremost, acknowledging the obvious, that the general consensus is that it's not that INEC has failed. It's not that Mahmoud has failed. It is that, as a matter of fact, things have not gone the way they have promised. Things are not going according to law, and they have a golden opportunity before declaring, before consolidating and acknowledging finally that they have failed. If they have not failed, they have an opportunity now to make corrections. And the first place to start in making correction is to suspend the announcement. That's the point I've made earlier. Now, if you look at the consideration that people are actually, those that INEC have appointed are actually mainly responsible for this sabotage we're experiencing now. We need to trace it back to what's responsible for this kind of thing. Impunity. We've seen situations, we've not very much heard about situations where ad hoc staff have been actually put on trial, punished. Mikey Guinea that you refer to appears to be the only personality that has had a towering reputation for ensuring strict compliance to the provisions of the INEC Act, the Electoral Act, in this election cycle and in previous election cycles. And again, the question was raised, and it was emphasized to me, that if INEC successfully applied the BVAS machine in previous off-cycle elections it had, even though Osun election has also now been called to question, the idea is, why is INEC not so confident anymore in the middle of the process to emphasize the integrity of the BVAS or the technology that it has adopted? INEC does have a lot of questions to answer. However, the past failure to prosecute ad hoc staff that are now mainly responsible for the sabotage that we are experiencing now is what is responsible for this continued failure that is looking upon us in the face. However, what we expect is this: where a situation where the international community is watching and has weighed in, a situation where the most highly respected Olusegun Obasanjo, in his patriotic stance, has always defied whatever the public will say and whatever the critics will say, to the extent of now also making pointed recommendations to the president. I think we are in a situation where definitely INEC needs to make a U-turn and create that confidence. But I don't like the idea that everything that happens, we are threatening to burn down Nigeria. What kind of thing is that? We are threatening to go carry out mass action. No, we have sworn to a commitment to allowing ourselves to be governed by law. However imperfect the law may be, a good example is the imperfect constitution that we have. We must take the example of India to continually begin to retinker with the situations we face with our laws and continue to re-engineer the social and political situation that we are in so that we can survive. We must not think of always burning down or pulling down. Even this election, as however faulty, however flawed it may be, can actually be saved if we are committed to doing the right thing, starting with the INEC chairman, who commits himself to suspending the process at this time and then investigating it. I can assure you, with nearly half of the polling units results declared so far, this is the appropriate time to not for us to reenact a June 12 situation where elections will be inconclusive forever. No, but for us to, unfortunately, before I make that point, unfortunately, we are having a 30-year cycle that seems to repeat history because the people have not changed. History will often repeat itself when men don't change and they keep doing the same things. This is very sad for us. However, when history repeats itself, the benefit of hindsight is for us to be able to correct it. So let us change it to a golden opportunity, as you have said. It may have been the worst of times, but it could just be the best of time for us now to correct a fundamental error, a fundamental hiatus in our history. So it's here before us, and the INEC chairman and the president are there to actually make the call.
Well, history will always repeat itself. But those people who fail to learn from history find themselves in a repetitive cycle of stupidity, as Wole Soyinka defines it in his concept of the Mobius strip. However, it seems to me that what we're faced with is that every electoral cycle presents its own lessons, and Nigerians may well find themselves, we may well find ourselves in a situation when all is said and done, whereby we still have to take a second look at this Electoral Act 2022, because we've seen aspects of it that are problematic, that may be contradictory, and that are not properly understood by all the stakeholders involved. You mentioned Section 120. Section 120 of the Electoral Act 2022 deals with the dereliction of duty. It has 6 sections, 1 to 6. And it prescribes fines, specific fines, for INEC officials who violate the process. Is there any hope, Frank Tietie, that any INEC official will be sanctioned, including those INEC officials in Kano, in a local government in Kano, who refuse to pay allowances to ad hoc staff? 3 days after the election, those ad hoc staff, they are still complaining. Will there be punishment for those INEC senior officials who refuse to provide training for the same men and women that they sent onto the streets? Another part of the law that has been flagrantly violated is Section 122, subsection 4 of that same Electoral Act 2022, which talks about secret balloting. But we have seen big men of Nigeria, governors, even the president himself, on election day, posing for photographs, brandishing, "This is how I voted." And the point has been made, was the president of Nigeria, in fact, sending a signal to deep state to say, this is the direction in which we want to go. Didn't that also compromise the process? If the president has immunity, how about other senior ranking officials of state who do not fall under Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution, who behaved in a similar manner? Or all of this will just go away like that, everybody will just behave as they wish, as if well, don't let me use the phrase that immediately came to mind. Okay, so what do you think, Frank Tietie? Electoral offenders will just get away with it? Really?
There is one man who has the constitutional responsibility to prosecute offenses in Nigeria, and that is the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation. Now, the question is, under Section 120, the punishment is actually 12 months in prison or a fine of 500,000 naira. Now, look at it this way. This is a harvest of impunity. You proceed to Section 122. That has been violated. I have unconfirmed reports that those officials, some of them ranking as ministers, who should have are actually the violators. Proceed again to Section 126. You will see a plethora of offenses, including display of party symbols and the snatching of ballot boxes. That one is an unfortunate one, because if you snatch ballot boxes in Nigeria, you can only be charged upon conviction to pay 100,000 naira fine or go to prison for 6 months. The point is this.
Or a combination of both.
Unless we use... well, it has hardly been so. First and foremost, we have hardly seen prosecution. And that's why I commend my brother, my true blood brother, Mike Igini. He has done everything possible to ensure that all those in the slightest manner that violated the Electoral Act, even as ranking persons like professors, he ensured that they were prosecuted and convicted. That is the kind of commitment we should see for public officials. But the interesting thing is this: the INEC chairman himself does not have immunity. You refer to Section 308. Now, he will be the chief returning officer of this election, particularly the presidential election. Should he go ahead with the flagrant disregard of provisions that create offenses with punishments or fine or imprisonment or a combination of both? Does it mean that the INEC chairman himself can actually be put on trial tomorrow for violating the Electoral Act if he proceeds with this flagrant disregard for the provisions of the Electoral Act? That is a very huge question to ask. The thing is this: when the president actually expressly, determinedly disregarded Section 122, I defended him. I said he is nearly above the law in practice, so let us not go there. But I mentioned and I shouted to high heavens
that please make it clear that nobody should do that, even if the president has done that. Unfortunately, the president did it at the beginning of the election, citing it as an example, and his example gained a lot of popularity and was well followed. Now, what will happen to those persons? So one of the lessons we must get is that there must be a commitment after this election cycle to prosecuting electoral offenders, irrespective of the weight of the offense. If we do so, we'll be on the pathway of redemption. But to think that at this time we should throw the baby and the bathwater, like it was said somewhere, no. We must be committed to a redemptive process. And I can tell you that fundamental to statute is the fact that there are ways you interpret it. You can interpret it in a literal, constructive, strict constructive approach, which is out of the way now. But by the time you bring the mischief rule, that is, what are the mischiefs? Yes, the mischief. What are the mischiefs this law was supposed to cure? By the time we approach it that way, I believe that the INEC chairman, with the immense powers of discretion he currently has, can redeem the situation. But if he chooses the path of going down the road of infamy by refusing to act with a patriotic intent, we are refusing to act out of respect to those who actually own the sovereignty of the country, the people, then we will now be forced to approach the court. And I can tell you, with our background as a lawyer, with our background in the law, we will believe anything the Supreme Court will do in this matter.
Except that in this particular case, with regard to the Electoral Act, golden rule, literal rule, you left that out, the mischief rule. The Electoral Act is so clear in its phrasing that mischief should not even be introduced.
Okay.
But when you face a big irony, whereby the chief law officer of the Federation, you said, following the example of the president, himself broke the law. That shows the seriousness of the dilemma in which we have found ourselves.
I mean, Dr. Bati, I'd like to jump into this and say something. I think it was, and I quote him a lot, Dwight Eisenhower, former president of America. He says, a country that values privilege over purpose and virtue will lose both. And that's what we have become as a country. And that's why we are even having to debate all of this. See, let's call it clear and simple. What was done is tantamount to changing the goalpost in the middle of the game. There's something people used to play, and I'm sure Mr. Frank remember this, called monkey post. You know, back in the days where there's a small goalpost, and when you see that they are scoring you so much, you try to change the position of the goalpost, or you cover up the goalpost so that it's harder for them to score you. And that's exactly what is happening. The literal translation. Because as stipulated in the law, and by INEC, the process is to be for people to vote at the polling unit, and the results are transmitted at the polling units. That was the fail-proof system. And that's why you see that even us journalists, do you know that INEC's failure having because you see in other climes of the world, people about electoral, and once the results are coming in through the portal, can upload real time. Certain TV channels had that in the Osho elections, but we do that because there was no data of the transparency in the system. So it has even hampered our work as journalists to be able to give people real-time data of what's happening because we don't have a portal. And these were the concerns I remember definitely I raised. And I want to raise concerns further and alluding to what Ayo said. INEC is on trial here. INEC, as at 15th of December 2022, claimed they spent 117 billion on technology alone. So close to half of their budgets of over 300 billion was spent on technology, 117 billion. If you're to divide that by the dollar rates today on the street market, it is $156 million. $156 million that was spent on technology alone. The question is, what is the quality of contractors they gave the job for? Number two, what was the quality of the peer review mechanism on the job? Who reviewed the technology? Who reviewed the back end? Who subjected it to a stress test? And Dr. Bati, we are getting home somewhere with what you said. If the telecoms company said there was no network glitch on that day, so it was not a case of a rowdy network. If INEC said that there was no cyber attack, then the last frontier will be something happened to the server. It is either the server was put off or the other things happened to the server we do not know. And that's why, to be able to analyze this effectively, it still has to go back to a report on the server. And what is even the quality of server? And that's why we kept on asking questions from INEC. At a point, I remember last year, I asked an INEC official here, let's even see the APIs to the server. People like us that wanted to do back-end work, let's even see the APIs to the server that we can connect to, that once the reports come in, we can see it on our dashboard. They said nothing of such. Who are the contractors? Who did the back end? Because you see, there's a popular Jamaican movie, Third World Cup. I don't know if you've seen it. And I'll never forget the words of Ratty in Third World Cup that said, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. Technology don't just act on its own. It is people that impute the back end of the technology itself. So what caused the downtime that INEC couldn't report as at that point in time when it happened? They had to leave it until when people started questioning the system. And the first answer they give, I keep referring to that thing. The first answer they gave was, oh, nobody promised. And please, people can go and fact check me. Look for the video recordings of what happened at the INEC Collation Center, the first interview had when the first press briefing was given on that Saturday. What was said as, oh, there was no promise of transmitting the presidential election. Then all of a sudden, moments after, there was a talk of a system glitch. I keep referring back to the technological backend because in the grand analysis of things, the reason why we use technology is because there's record purposes. If it was before elections that we used to have in Nigeria, that we did everything on paper, by now people will have burnt the paper. So you will not even have the polling unit by polling units. The only hope and consolation Nigeria has is the fact that we have a backup online. And that has always been the problem. If you think I'm lying about this, try asking INEC the polling unit by polling unit result of the 2007 elections. I'm sure they can't give it to you. If you try asking them the polling unit by polling unit results of the 2003 elections, I'm sure they don't have it. But the reason why a lot of people are confident in the system was because technology was put in place. And the most important part of the technology was the storage. Please, let's go back to the 2019 election. What was the major bone of contention? Wasn't it the case of server? Wasn't it the case of server? So it is this same server. And that's why everybody was excited. Even when some unscrupulous lawmakers tried to scuttle the process of electronic transmission, everybody was excited when the people's will happened. Because it was this same case of server that the Supreme Court just talked about. And the question is, there was no INEC server. So if the server in this case is not also qualitative, if we talked in 2019 about a case of server, and the server in this case has also been scuttled, then where is the hope?
Okay, there was an element, that you referred to about the media.
Yes.
Just to make the point that, our role in this entire process is just to report information as provided by official sources. You know that the National Broadcasting
The IREV is an official source, Dr. Abati.
The National... No, please,
let him learn.
don't interrupt me. The National Broadcasting Commission had issued a statement telling broadcasters to abide by the National Broadcasting Code, sections 5.3.3 from I think A to N, or L, to say that, look, this is what the code says. These are certain things you cannot do. Yesterday, the National Broadcasting Commission issued another statement dated February, or is it February 27?
Yeah.
I think it was so dated, reminding broadcasters also that, look, you cannot have your own results, you cannot announce results, you cannot project as regards who is likely to win and all of that. And the whole of that is to warn in the concluding paragraph that broadcasters, should not engage in anything or promotion of any idea that may result in the breakdown of law and order. So while it is the responsibility of, the media to report as it is, we do not have the responsibility to jump into the arena to create, news or results that have not been provided. So it's important to offer that clarification regardless of our functions under Section 22 of the Constitution, and also without prejudice to our right under Section 39 of the Constitution. If any,
yes.
You have been an old-time
Please, can I be permitted to make a clarification on what I said?
Let me listen to you very well.
Let me make a clarification, Dr. Abati. I'm not sure you understand what I said. This is what I said.
Okay.
As regards election reportage, if the IREV works the way it should work, media houses can connect to the IREV and upload results real time. Dr. Abati, what I'm saying has been done in this country in Osun elections.
No, it's important.
No, I'm just trying to make my point. What I said has been done in this country in Osun elections. In Osun elections, even Yaga partnered with another media house, and there was a demonstrative board because the IREV was up and working. So as the polling units were coming in, results were being collated from the INEC as a source and put on a board for people to be able to see. I'm not talking about projections. It is America, they do projections and exit polls. What I was just saying is that if their system truly worked the way it should work, there was no qualms about media house connecting to the system and projecting the result as released from their own portal. That was all I was saying. I'm not saying we compromise or we project
that is
anything.
the point.
Yes.
The media must not overreach itself, and journalists should not go beyond their brief.
Ruben, you made
it's
the
a
point.
professional point.
You made a point.
If any, you have been an old features writer until you became a big man before my very eyes. Okay, over to you.
Now, Ruben, I think the point you made is very straightforward. We have our limitations as journalists, as broadcasters, and the broadcasting code clearly states what you can do and what you cannot do. And as law-abiding professionals, we abide by those rules. You cannot go ahead and start announcing results that have not been authenticated by or put forward by the electoral body, and we stick by that rules. I don't think it's a matter. I think, Ruben, you just nailed the matter on its head. But the point I will just try to bring forward again in the famous, of course, every letter from former President Olusegun Obasanjo has become a famous piece of a document which I'm sure posterity will want to see in future what former president said at this point in time, at that point in time in our history, especially on national issues. Now, in this letter, he also called on President Muhammadu Buhari, the incumbent, that this is a moment that will either make or taint his legacy as a president. But I don't know what he expects the president to do, because in fairness to President Muhammadu Buhari, he gave INEC all they needed to do a good job. Budget approved without even questioning. Money provided at the appropriate time. And what we thought was going to be like a hurdle to be crossed, given the history of President Muhammadu Buhari and the signing of the Electoral Act. Remember when he was running, 4 times electoral bill was presented to him, 4 times he turned down. But in 2022, despite the fact that he had reservations, he signed the Electoral Bill into law. Hence, we now have the Electoral Act 2022, which has been the document guiding this election. All we're saying, INEC, follow this document. But for the president, because former President Olusegun has called on President Muhammadu Buhari to wade into the matter, I don't know what you expect the president to do this time. That he will not be accused of interfering. Of course, having shown his own vote to the entire world, even in the election process. But I don't know what you expect the president to do at this time. Intervene in the system, that will in itself cause its own problem. So the man where the buck stops right now is the INEC chairman, who has to do the needful, follow the law, and perhaps Obasanjo, former President Olusegun Obasanjo has presented a pathway, not cancelling the entire election. Pause with the election results you are releasing, of these malfeasance which have been so highlighted before we move forward. I think if this path is followed, we may just be heading somewhere. Ruben?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the big question then is, what are the reservations of the INEC chair from halting the announcement of the results has been called on him by not just the former president, but a number of stakeholders, including some of the political parties whom, as we mentioned earlier on, had staged walkouts. Why is the INEC chair reluctant? It seems as if, from observation, that the body language, or his body language, in terms of conducting a free, fair, and credible election has somewhat changed. Just before election, we had a sense of confidence because of statements that were made, assurances that had been had, briefings that had been done, joint stakeholder meetings, assuring Nigerians that they were committed, at least from the INEC perspective, to conducting and presenting a very credible election. However, since the progression of these elections, a number of questions have been asked, and rightly so. Unfortunately, the responses that have come from INEC hasn't been satisfactory. And what the people are now calling for, beyond the electorate, even like we've mentioned, the chairman of the National Peace Committee, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, international observers, is can we take a pause, bearing in mind some of the issues that have come forward. Aside from beavers not working, we've had reports of violence in a number of polling units and wards. We've had complaints around the fact that some people were disenfranchised as they didn't have the opportunity to vote. So there are concerns around these areas. What is INEC going to do about this? Are they going to suspend or rerun elections in these wards? Are they going to continue with announcing what some people have termed incomplete representation of results from these areas? So it's not a satisfactory process. It can still be salvaged. Why is INEC loath to salvage this at this point? What's at stake? Is it money concerns as to how much money would be spent in terms of having to rerun in certain areas? As we've mentioned, the president hasn't in any way hampered or stopped INEC from discharging its duties. Now, the resultant effect of this, as you mentioned, Mr. Tete, is this, that we've already begun to feel up the pulse of the people in terms of unrest and dissatisfaction. We want to prevent what has happened. Like you mentioned, how can we learn from history? 30 years ago, we had quite an unfortunate situation because of a similar experience where people felt like the will of the people or the choices of the people wasn't respected. And so what we are hoping to avoid in the event that INEC does continues and proceeds to declare a winner at the end of today is that the people who feel disenfranchised, who feel as if their voices or the complaints haven't been adhered to, would go on, to complain. I like that you mentioned earlier on that we should seek redress in the court of law. We should seek redress as we ought to. But also, you cannot stop the responses. We have seen it traditionally happen. We have seen it historically happen. Therefore, as enjoined by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, that to wittingly or unwittingly avoid situations of unrest, civil unrest and violence, the INEC chair, it behoves on him to halt the process, investigate these claims, these complaints, before we continue to announce results? I mean, Dr. Bati.
Ayo, you and Emmanuel Efeni, you are putting the buck on the desk of the INEC chairman. I keep hearing INEC chairman, INEC chairman. The buck
stops with him.
Well, but President Obasanjo was saying, look, if things go wrong, INEC chairman can just hop onto a plane and go wherever he wants to go. Frank Tietie, do you agree with President Obasanjo that the buck stops at the table of President Buhari, and that this is about President Buhari and his legacy? Or do you agree with Ifeni and Ayo?
I agree with President Obasanjo absolutely, in absolute terms. Let me tell you this. You know, never again should we ever experience the conflict of 1967 to 1970. Never, never. Even though some of us did not experience it, the fact that we read documents about it, it's horrendous enough. And do you know what led to the crisis in 1967? It was preceded by electoral malpractices. And all of us who are students of history can come to a convergence on that point. That is, starting from the 1962 Action Group crisis, which led to the pronouncement of a state of emergency in Western Nigeria, together with the 1964-65 federal election crisis. And then the situation was just ripe for an explosion to get that was now ignited by the 1966 January intervention, and then the subsequent one in July. No, we don't want to. That's why we must do everything possible to avoid conflict. And who has that responsibility? We have a very powerful figure, powerful personality in the president, in the person of the Nigerian president. He must realize that he cannot allow this country slide into any form of conflict. He's the one who's responsible. He watches it. And again, I agree with my senior brother, Emmanuel Efeni, that actually the president, the INEC chairman has responsibility. But the president has done everything possible to ensure that INEC organizes a free, fair, and then, in capital word, credible election. The elections don't appear to be credible now. It doesn't matter how much the INEC chairman feels. I can empathize with him. I've gone too far from where I'm coming from. I'm not turning back. How can I turn back? Let's just go. Let's just go on. But he forgets that we had a crisis, a major crisis in 1967 because of what is happening now. That is the reason why I trust him. He's a professor of history. He knows. Many people don't know the purpose of studying history. Why faculties, why the departments of learning are all devoted to studying history. It's so that we can know who we are and to avoid the mistakes that we are capable of doing. What we are witnessing now is who we are. We are a people that are not committed to standards. We are putting ourselves on trial. We are not exculpating anybody, but we are also having the privilege of now saying, oh, is this the direction we want to go, or that is the direction? And that is why I cannot thank President Olusegun Obasanjo enough. I don't care whatever the critics hold against him. This is a man who would, like his colleagues who are there, keeping quiet and then enjoying their retirement. The man will jump into the fray, abuse him, call him all the names. He said, I love Nigeria. That is a man who fought a civil war. That is a man who saw people die needlessly because of the actions of political actors who are mindless. On that note, the president must realize that this country cannot go back. It must only go forward. And the way to do so is that what are the standards, what are the common standards that we have agreed among ourselves to adhere to? If these standards are not being adhered to, if they are being sabotaged, we can correct them. I cannot be thankful enough that we are in the middle of an electoral process that has problems. I am not going to join anybody to start throwing blames, but I take responsibility as a Nigerian citizen that we are going to put hands together and solve the problem. But what is most important is that we are sincere enough to acknowledge the practical reality that things are not right now. We may not end up as a laughing stock. We will turn out as a people who had problems, but we lived up to our responsibility and solved them. The electoral process right now has a problem. It can be resolved either through law or
plain consensus of acknowledging that things didn't go according to standard. Can we make a reversal and then continue? Now, this is very, very important that nobody should leave this process as a political party or a candidate disgruntled. And the idea of imposing leadership on this country will ultimately lead to conflict. We know that as a matter of fact.
Well, you raised an important point about people not knowing about history. I recommend to such persons the book titled What is History by Edward Hallett Carr. But I need to ask you just one more question before we go. You say you support President Obasanjo. Well, he's also calling for a cancellation of the results of the activity in those places where BVAS failed. Okay, what if INEC cancels in those places and BVAS still does not work? Because what we're dealing with is not just about a machine. We're dealing with the incompetence of persons. What happens? Briefly.
No. See, we imported technology to create greater credibility for the process. And look at the provisions of Section 47. It contemplates, and I made the point earlier, that BVAS will fail. It did contemplate so. But what's the solution? Get another BVAS machine. If that one fails, okay, postpone the election. And then it also it added a caveat. Do not make a return on that election until that poll has been conducted. So what are we talking about? But we're looking at it as if it's a fallen situation and there's no hope. There is hope. Look, I stand by the former president in all, in every sphere. You have to cancel election where there is widespread violation of the standard, the provisions of the law, widespread violence, widespread flagrant disregard of electoral standards. When the law makes recommendations, make a transmission, let it be live. Make sure you are convinced as a person, and you will be punished as a collation officer, a return officer, if you don't do that. And eventually you disregard that and you're going ahead. If you do so, you must have a supervening reason. Yes.
Well, the section you are referring to is Section 47, subsection 3 of the Electoral 2022. But who is still obeying the law in this electoral process? Thank you very much indeed.